Coming up on Talking Points, a historic confirmation. The Senate voted last week to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court.
Plus, Ukrainian officials urge civilians in the east to flee over fears of a new Russian invasion. What President Zelensky wants the EU to do in response next.
And New York State passes a $220 billion budget for the next fiscal year. All the details next. Talking Points starts right now.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Chilekasi, Adele.
And I'm Moriah, Humiston. Let's start with some of today's top stories. Pakistan has a new Prime Minister. Shehbaz Sharif was sworn in today. Outgoing Prime Minister Imran Khan tried to dissolve Parliament, but Pakistan's Supreme Court declared his actions illegal. Khan was then removed by Parliament after a no-confidence vote.
French President Emmanuel Macron will face challenger Marine Le Pen for the second time in 5 years. Macron and right-wing leader Le Pen were the top two candidates in France's first round of elections held yesterday. The two will face off in a runoff election on April 24th. French opinion polls are giving Le Pen a much better chance of winning this time around compared to the last election in 2017.
And on Thursday, the Senate confirmed D.C. Circuit Appeals Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. The final vote was 53 to 47 in favor. 3 Republicans joined with all 50 Democrats. Jackson will be the first black woman in U.S. history to sit on the Supreme Court. Talking Points Congressional Analyst Bond Demetri Photos and legal analyst Spencer Kweskin join us now with more on this confirmation. So Spencer and Bond, welcome. Spencer, we're going to start with you. From a legal perspective, how does the court shift with Jackson now on the bench?
Yeah, so to figure out how the voice of the court will shift with Jackson on the bench, it's important to take a look at her background. So she's originally from Miami, and she went to Harvard, and she graduated Harvard magna cum laude with an AB in government. She then went to Harvard Law, where she was senior editor on the Harvard Law Review. Now, Harvard Law Review is a very prestigious legal journal, and so she was a senior editor on this journal, and it's a very prestigious position for a law student. After law school, she clerked for a number of justices. She clerked on the U.S. District of Massachusetts. She clerked on the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and she clerked for former Supreme Court Justice Breyer, who she is replacing. She also worked as an assistant federal public defender where she handled cases before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and it's been a while since we had a federal public defender on the court, and so it's going to be interesting to see what perspective she has with that. She was also a private attorney where she worked for Goodwin and Proctor, Feinberg and Rosen, and Morrison and Forster. In 2009, she became the chair of the U.S. Sentencing Commission. In 2012, President Obama nominated her, and she was confirmed to the U.S. For the D.C. Circuit Court, the District Court, and then she worked her way up to the D.C. Court of Appeals in 2021, where she was nominated and confirmed by the Senate. And as a judge, she handled cases in a way that's very similar to the justice that she's replacing, Justice Breyer. So the composition of the court is not really shifting all that much. The bench is still going to have 6 conservatives and 3 liberals on it. And so, as you said, last Thursday she was just confirmed to the Supreme Court, and the vote was 53 to 47, which you can see on your screen now.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
So, Bond, years ago, for Supreme Court confirmation hearings in the Senate, there used to be a lot of bipartisanship when confirming a judge for an open seat. With the Jackson hearings here, we see a 53 to 47 vote with 3 Republicans breaking ranks, siding along with the Democrats to confirm Judge Jackson. Why did 3 Republicans break here?
So essentially 3 Republicans, Mitt Romney of Utah, Collins of up in Maine, and also Murkowski of Alaska. They broke ranks, but it's not really surprising for Mitt Romney because he's always been a wild card when it comes to Republicans. However, what's surprising is Collins and Murkowski, but looking down to the actual states, what they have to do is they have to compete a lot more than most other senators, because in these states, it's a lot more of a purple state rather than a blue state or a red state, meaning that they really have to pull voters from different sections. And for this one, what they're trying to do is appeal to the Democrats because it was already won. Jackson was already approved, especially because they had all 50 of the Democrats on board. When the 50th Democrat said, yes, I'm going to vote yay, they could just do it for political points. This was for clout. This was essentially them pulling in and saying, hey, I want to grab some more Democratic voters. I want to grab some Democrats, because what's happening is essentially they're trying to pull from this different base and add to the voter count, especially with upcoming elections.
All right, Bond and Spencer on a historic confirmation. Thank you so much. Last week, Russian missiles struck a train station in eastern Ukraine, killing at least 52 people and injuring hundreds more. The Russians are reshifting their forces to the east of the country after failing to take the capital of Kyiv.
Ukrainian officials are urging civilians in the east to flee immediately. Talking Point's international analyst Ericka Love is here with an update on Ukraine's actions going forward and the response from the EU. Ericka.
Thanks, guys. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for more sanctions targeting Russian imports. He says that the money going to Russia through gas and oil is paying for the country's war efforts. Zelensky is pushing for more impactful restrictions on Russian cash flow. He has argued that an oil embargo is the first step. These comments come after recent attacks in eastern Ukraine. Around 4,500 people have been evacuated through humanitarian efforts. Officials in Ukraine also believe that Russian troops have pulled away from certain areas near the capital to prepare for a larger invasion in the east. Because of this, the Ukrainian government is urging everyone there to flee.
So, Ericka, how have EU officials responded to Zelensky's call to ban gas imports in lieu of recent attacks?
Well, just recently, Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited Ukraine. He was there with President Zelensky. He's pledged over $500 million towards the war efforts from the World Bank. He has also sent in 120 armored vehicles into the region to help with current war efforts. There's also still a consensus across the European Union that the best way to handle war efforts right now and to stop Russia's invasion is to ban imports of Russian artillery, to ban any type of import and exchange of Russian oil and anything of that nature.
And so, Ericka, outside of the EU, what are officials saying and what are other world leaders' positions towards Russia and recent attacks?
Yeah, so essentially, Austrian president, he came to speak with President Putin earlier today. They spoke, it was kind of tense. He said they had an open conversation, but it was very direct. That if people keep dying in Ukraine, sanctions are going to get tougher. The other thing is President Biden spoke with the Indian Prime Minister today to urge him, to encourage him to drop their neutrality towards the war, essentially. And then, of course, New Zealand and countries like South Korea are still pledging millions of dollars towards the current war efforts.
All right, Ericka Love, thank you so much. Congress is working to pass a series of bills designed to punish Russia. The bills target Russia's trade status, economic exports, and standing in international politics. This comes as Russia continues its invasion into Ukraine amid accusations of alleged war crimes. Here to break down what Congress is doing to deter Russian aggression is our Talking Points congressional analyst, Dominic Chiappone. Dominic, thank you for being here. How is Congress targeting Russia with these new bills?
What we've seen from Congress so far with the Russian-Ukrainian conflict is a focus on crippling Russia's economy and their standing on the international level without direct military aggression. We are seeing that currently right now. They just passed two new bills almost unanimously through both the House of Representatives and the Senate, mainly focusing on economics. They first off suspended trade relations between the United States and Russia. They also banned all imports or all exports from ranging from oil, coal, and natural gas coming from Russia. And more importantly, helping out Ukraine, they passed this new Lend-Lease Act, which has been used dating back to World War II, which basically gives the United States the ability to fund Ukrainian operations without any bureaucracy or any interference. But the most important thing, though, is that with these two bills, the Senate passed them unanimously, and only a handful of House Representatives did not pass these two bills.
Dominic, realistically here, will this legislation have any effect on Russia?
In terms of their economics, and again, they're staying on the international world, absolutely. What we've seen right now is that ultimately Congress has a limited ceiling in what they could do to actually involve themselves with this Russia-Ukrainian conflict. Keep in mind, this is just one legislative body in an entire country with tons of countries involving themselves in this operation. The real beneficiary, though, is easily Ukraine, continuing that support both with humanitarian aid and non-direct and direct military aid coming from the United States and other countries. Because currently right now in Ukraine, we all know this is a dire situation, especially for the people caught in the crossfire currently in Ukraine. The U.S. ambassador, for global justice, Beth Van Schaack, described kind of the recent instances involving Russian forces there, and this is what she had to say.
There have been numerous credible reports of hospitals, schools, theaters, etc., being intentionally attacked, as well as indiscriminate attacks. Russia's forces have destroyed apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, other elements of the critical civilian infrastructure.
So down the road, in terms of options, we could see kind of similar trends where it's going to be bills targeting Russia's economics as well as their international standing moving forward.
All right, Dominic Chiappone, thank you so much. Coming up after the break, we discuss multiple investigations involving former President Donald Trump. Stay with us.
Stem is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner!
Go. Excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the family. Oh, I thought you were on my team.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Former President Donald Trump is under investigation in both his former home state of New York and in Washington. According to a New York Times report, the Congressional January 6th panel has enough evidence for a criminal referral of Trump.
However, the committee is split on whether or not to do so. Joining us to discuss both of these investigations are Talking Points analysts Teagan Brown and Jacob Goldberg. Teagan, Jacob, thank you for joining us tonight. So, Teagan, this report claims that the committee can make a criminal referral, but what exactly would that do to the former president?
Yeah, so they can make this criminal referral right now. They have the evidence to show that Mr. Trump did obstruct a congressional proceeding, as well as that he did try to defraud the American people. But ultimately, this would be more of a symbolic act. It wouldn't cause him to be arrested. It wouldn't cause any fines against him. So it would just be a showing and a symbolic act of his guilt.
And like Teagan mentioned, because it's a symbolic act, many members of this January 6th committee are hesitant to go through with the criminal referral because they'll make it look like they asked Attorney General Merrick Garland to go through and investigate Trump, something that they do not want.
Let's talk about this committee. So has anyone on this committee so far commented publicly?
So the committee's vice chairwoman, Liz Cheney, has commented. She says, like I said before, that they do have enough evidence to do this. And she actually said, I think that this is absolutely the case. It's absolutely clear that what President Trump was doing, what a number of people around him were doing, that they knew it was unlawful and they did it anyway. And this, of course, is referring to his involvement with the January 6th insurrection. Along with the vice chairwoman, California Rep. Zoe Lofgren also said of the referral that, maybe they would do this, maybe they wouldn't, but ultimately that it doesn't have any legal impact.
And talking about that contrast, obviously we saw Cheney saying that there is not a divide on the board of the January 6th committee, but there clearly is, because Elaine Luria, a Virginia representative, said that the committee should issue a referral. Teagan talked about some representatives who said they shouldn't. We've seen that there's some that are saying they should. So there's definitely a clear divide on this committee about whether or not to go through with it.
So we've seen members of the former president's family, including Ivanka, they've testified before the January 6th committee. Is it possible at any point where we'll see the former president, Donald Trump himself, testify?
Well, you talked about Ivanka, and there's other people who might testify. Even Mike Pence might testify. Obviously, we know he was the vice president before Trump. He's got a lot to say. And Trump himself might testify. Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi, said, "We'll be talking about the likelihood of a Trump interview in the not-too-distant future." Also, only one president has ever faced a congressional subpoena. That was Harry Truman in 1953. And Donald Trump obviously not agreeing with this, January 6th committee, saying it's a witch hunt, saying it's a ploy to get him to stop running from the 2024 election. So it's very unlikely he'll comply with the committee, but there's a chance he might testify.
And when Ivanka was called forward to testify, she did so, for 8 hours. That questioning continued, and ultimately her testimony was said to be helpful. However, she just spoke kind of, broadly, wasn't very chatty or specific about it.
All right, Teagan and Jake, thank you so much. New York State lawmakers passed a $220 billion budget this weekend. It was 9 days past the state's deadline.
Some aspects of the plan include bail reform and gas tax relief. Syracuse University will even receive some money. Here's what Governor Kathy Hochul had to say in announcing the deal.
This moment is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to not just bring relief to families and put more money in people's pockets, but to also make historic investments in our people and on our state. And that's exactly what we've been working on day and night for weeks now, to craft a budget that does just that.
And Talking Points analyst Olivia Maniscalco and Tyler O'Neill join us. So Tyler and Olivia, let's start with this. Why did it take the legislature so long to pass the budget? Olivia.
Yeah, I'd say the main thing was bail reform. There was a lot of controversy surrounding it because crime in New York has gone up, specifically in New York City, so Governor Hochul was pressured to do something about this. What eventually did get passed is that criminals with repeated offenders are subject to cash bail if their alleged crimes include theft, firearms, property damage, and some other low-level crimes. So some, specifically Republicans, didn't want this because they feel like it's kind of a political move. She's just responding to a national spike in crime. I mean, it's not just in New York City. Since the pandemic, crime has spiked everywhere. So that getting decided was a big part of it. There was also some issues with money and how much they were going to spend on everything.
And also the issue of casinos within New York City. They ended up issuing 3 licenses for people, for casinos to get within New York City. Local officials in Manhattan didn't want to have those because of their concerns of how it would impact the neighborhoods and people living there, but they did end up making the budget, but that did partially hold back why it took so long for it to get passed.
And so we're seeing that this budget is actually impacting us right here in Syracuse. Tyler, what is this budget going to do for the city?
That's right. So $20 million are coming right here to SU at the Dome. They're going to renovate the Dome. Some of the renovations include new seats. Now, right now, they have those bench-style seating. They're going to try to put new individual seating, as well as a new facility to have for pre- and post-game events. That's where that money would go towards too. But they're going to bring it here to SU specifically because $240 million have come from the Dome to the CNY economy. And the Dome has contributed more than 5,000 jobs to this city. So funding it will help keep the economy going.
Talking Points analysts Tyler O'Neill and Olivia Maniscalco, thank you. Coming up after the break, Democrats and Republicans spend big money ahead of November's midterms. We'll give you the full numbers next.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back to Talking Points. Midterms are approaching, and new numbers have shown record high campaign ad spending. Talking Points campaign trail analyst Jake Morel is in studio to tell us more about what campaign funding numbers look like in the nation's most competitive races. Jake.
Chile, thank you. Now, let's look at this number here first. The midterms are rapidly approaching, and in the first quarter of 2022, there's been $450 million spent by super PACs and party committees just on campaign ads for these midterms. Now, these midterms are getting closer and closer, so we may even see that number go up. They're coming up in November 2022, but let's break that down a little bit. Let's go back and look at 2018 to put this in perspective. $158 million spent in just 3 months, the first quarter of 2018. That sounds like a lot of money, right? Looks like pennies compared to the 2022 midterm election cycle. $450 million, as I mentioned on the last slide. Another important number to look at is that is a 184% increase in spending, a pretty big jump. And let's break it down even further and look at where the money is being spent. Phoenix, if you think of the state of Arizona, a lot of wide open midterm races there, was definitely a battleground state in the 2020 election. So we're seeing a lot of money be spent by both parties there to try and influence voters in these midterm elections. Atlanta, similar situation with Arizona, Georgia, some wide open midterm races there and some heated primaries. And now if we look at number 4, number 6, and number 10, that's Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg. Those are all 3 cities in Pennsylvania, which, again, battleground state, was a battleground state in 2020, and will definitely have some heating up primaries as well as other midterm election races coming up here in the next couple of months. So we're seeing a record amount of money being spent on campaign ads in this midterm cycle. So we will have to see how that affects the primaries coming up here in a few months and the midterms coming up in November. Chile, Moriah, back to you guys.
Jake, thank you. Members of the House Administration Committee are discussing the possibility of prohibiting lawmakers from trading stocks. Here to tell us about the potential bill and what it could mean for America's future is Talking Points analyst Anna Salewycz. So, Anna, what are the latest details behind this updated bill and who's supporting it?
So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she has approved a plan to ban members of Congress from trading stocks. Now, a House committee is currently drafting the rules, and legislation is supposed to be put up for a vote sometime this year. There are several versions of a congressional stock trading ban around in the Senate right now. And as for support, we typically see Democrats more inclined to supporting the proposals versus Republicans.
What is the likelihood of lawmakers crafting a bill to prohibit congressional stock trading before the midterms?
So it's a little bit unclear. Setting their specific arguments aside, these proposals have generated tepid responses from both parties, as lawmakers aren't too keen on restricting their own finances. Additionally, the differences between the various proposals have to be worked out before a final bill can be crafted. But the key here is Nancy Pelosi, as after months of kind of restricting, she gave into the growing pressures of rank and file members to create a congressional stock trading ban. And her support here just represents a critical turning point, which raises the likelihood that a bill gets crafted by the midterms.
How would this bill impact the American public and how they view the government?
Sure. So this bill has generated widespread public support, as many members of the public feel Congress members are privy to information that the general public isn't necessarily exposed to. So if we look at a new poll from the Partnership for Public Service, 56% of respondents say they do not trust the government much or at all. And many people feel like this proposed congressional stock trading ban would prevent lawmakers from serving their own financial interests. So this bill could very much restore the public's faith in our government.
All right, Anna, thank you so much. Like you said, this is something that not many Americans know about, so it will be an ongoing story. Thank you. Coming up after the break, President Biden is looking to overhaul gun control laws on the federal level. How the White House and Justice Department are looking to crack down on ghost guns. Next on Talking Points.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Welcome back to Talking Points. President Biden says his administration is looking to crack down on ghost guns. Biden says the Justice Department is working on new regulations that would save lives in the nation's most crime-ridden states. So Chile and Teagan, Biden is looking to influence a congressional overhaul of the U.S.'s firearm laws.
Yes, Moriah, and not only that, you're seeing words of support from Governor Kathy Hochul, who issued a statement around 4 o'clock today. In that statement, she said, quote, "Today, President Biden and the Department of Justice announced additional steps to crack down on ghost guns, including making, quote, buy, build, shoot kits subject to the same federal laws that apply to other firearms. I applaud President Biden for closing this loophole that threatened the safety of our communities. And I want to thank the President for his ongoing partnership. No one should be able to circumvent the process to gain access to deadly weapons, especially those that take just 30 minutes to assemble and whose parts often cost less than $100.
And I think it's important to look at what exactly ghost guns are. So these are guns without serial numbers, and these can also be, like you said, cheap to make because these parts can be sold separately and then put together. And actually, local sheriffs around here have already commented on this. Oneida County Sheriff Rob Mashel said that this is an ongoing issue and that it does need to be stopped through legal legislation.
And so we're seeing that these ghost guns right now, they're being pulled back a little bit by different departments. So, for example, in New York City, the New York Police Department had pulled 163 of those ghost guns in this period in 2022, where last year they only pulled 29. So we're seeing this being pulled at a city level and also at a nationwide level.
And if you remember, back in February 3rd to be exact, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Governor Kathy Hochul, and President Biden all met to kind of discuss the rising gun violence issues that not only the city of New York, the state of New York is having to deal with, but we're seeing rising crime numbers around the country as well. So this may have been one of the tenets of that conversation, and you now see it come to fruition via Biden here, and of course with Hochul supporting that as well.
And we're seeing, in these local counties around here, specifically in Oneida, like I said before, this is a big part of those gun crimes happening now.
And it'll be an ongoing issue that we'll continue to talk about. But that's all the time we have for you on this episode of Talking Points. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News and like us on Facebook. I'm Moriah Humiston.
And I'm Chilekasi, Adele. From all of us here, have a great night, Syracuse.